It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Welcome in to another series winner, a series winning edition of Rico Brogna, episode number 479. The Mets win a rubber game of the three-game series against the Chicago Cubs at Citi Field, and they do it on Mother's Day. They do it with that very early Roku TV start. They do it shockingly with Gary Cohen calling the game. Who the hell saw that happening? And they do it in a way in which, let's face it, the finale of this series against Chicago was mostly frustrating because the offense remained very limp. The offense remained unopportunistic against Matthew Boyd. And also, we went into this game on Sunday, I think most of us, kind of disappointed when we saw the lineup. Let's start right there. Brett Baty has broken out over the last couple of days, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about him. He is certainly a candidate for the Rico Brogna I'm the Man Now star of the series, but we'll discuss that later. But Baty hits 3 home runs in 2 days, hits 2 home runs in the game on Saturday, a game we will also discuss in just a few minutes. And he's not in the lineup on Sunday. And Matthew Boyd is a lefty. I understand that. And you want to put Brett in the best position to succeed. I get all of that. But when a guy is coming off of a 2-home run game, a guy who needs confidence, let's face it, Brett Baty has been sent down to the minor leagues 500 times. This may be his last lease on life. Who knows, though, because it seems as if he's blown every opportunity, and here he is again. That this would have been a game when I'm putting the lineup together, if I'm Carlos Mendoza, where I reward him for the hotness over the last couple of days and say, you know what? I'm going to put you in to face Matthew Boyd. Now, I'll tell you where I was conflicted. I want Baty in the lineup. I wanted Baty in the lineup. So I am on the side of most Met fans who, when they saw the Mother's Day lineup, said, where's Brett Baty? But I keep thinking back to a game, it was about 9 years ago against the San Francisco Giants. Michael Conforto, who at the time was, I don't want to say similar to Brett Baty, but was also a top prospect, was off to a really good start. And we were screaming that he's got to face lefties. Allow Michael Conforto to face lefties. The only way he's ever going to hit lefties is to face lefties. And so it was a weekend game against the Giants, and we finally got our way. Michael Conforto started the game against Madison Bumgarner and the San Francisco Giants. And maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it was, but that game against Bumgarner, where he struggled naturally, a top-line left-handed starting pitcher, put Michael Conforto in a tailspin. So I always think about that when I scream into a microphone, hey, the guy's hot, screw lefty, throw him out there. Obviously, if you're Carlos Mendoza, you want to continue to put this man in the best position to succeed. But here's the big difference, as conflicted as I may be. The big difference is that other than having the exact same initials, which coincidentally they do, Madison, Matthew, Bumgarner, Boyd, he's not Madison Bumgarner. Matthew Boyd is not Sandy Koufax. Matthew Boyd is not Randy Johnson. So with that said, despite thinking back to that Conforto story from a decade ago, I wanted the man in the lineup. Now, I'll be specific on who I would have kept out of the lineup, because we've also been screaming about Luis Angel Acuna playing every day, and I would have had him out there. We have been screaming about Mark Vientos being out there just about every day. At least I have. So I wanted him out there. I think the guy that you would have thought about sitting was Starling Marte. So you could have started Baty at third base, where his defense has been very solid throughout the season, and Vientos has not. And you could have DH Mark Vientos like we saw the previous night, or you could have just DH'd Brett Baty. I like Marte. I've been high on Starling Marte. But there comes a time, and I think we're certainly there here in the middle of May, where you want to reward the hot hand. You want to play the guy that deserves it. So think about it this way. You did Brett Baty a favor, as I use the quotations with my fingers, to say, hey, we're going to protect him and not have him face Matthew Boyd. But now he's going to face Paul Skeens on a Monday night. Like, I get it. It's a righty. It's a better matchup, but it's still Paul Skeens. It's still one of the better pitchers in baseball. With that said, every time we rip Carlos Mendoza, every time I rip Carlos Mendoza, good things end up happening with the decisions that he makes. So even though Brett Baty wasn't in the lineup, all the guys that were options to sit, for the most part, did something. Brandon Nimmo, who you could have argued was an option to sit, could have sat him down and played Starling Marte in the outfield and DH'd Brett Baty or Mark Vientos. Well, Brandon Nimmo hits the 2-run home run that puts the exclamation point on the 4-1 rally. Starling Marte, who I suggested shouldn't have played, was on base multiple times in this game. Mark Vientos, who I would have played, goes 2 for 4, hits a home run, drives in another run in the 8th inning, which at the time felt like a very clutch, big RBI single as the Mets were trying to add insurance. And even Luis Angel Acuna didn't have the greatest game because he did get picked off, but he had a hit in this game and got on base. So even when Mendy does things that maybe we don't agree with, they tend to work out. With that said, as we move forward with the Brett Baty hot streak, there is an opportunity for him to play. It's not that complicated. The DH spot is wide open. And between picking a day in which maybe you sit Acuna, which you can do once in a while, I want to see him mostly play, but it doesn't mean there can't be a day a week where he sits, or a day a week where Vientos sits, or a day a week where Nimmo sits. Clearly the left-handed DH with Jesse Winker out should be Brett Baty for now, or Jeff McNeil. There's plenty of opportunities to continue to ride this Brett Baty hot hand. This is not Brett Baty taking the job away from Mark Vientos, because very quietly, and it feels like even Mendy wasn't aware of it, Vientos has hit. Like, his defense has been shaky, and that's a little bit different. That's a different discussion. But offensively, there have been signs of life from Mark Vientos for a couple of weeks now, and it certainly was the case throughout this series against the Chicago Cubs. Let's break down this third game. We'll break down the second game. And today, when we do the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series, instead of me presenting the first word on the options or Hoff presenting the first words, we're going to let you present the first words, because I have been facing heavy criticism for our Rico star of the series decision from the Arizona series. A lot of it needed to be Lindor. How the hell do you give it to Soto? Well, I've got good news. I got good news before we get to your ideas for the Rico star of the series. Juan Soto ain't a candidate this time. So you don't have to worry about Soto stealing that award from anybody else. Let's get to the game. How about Griffin Canning? On Mother's Day, in which it was not only Griffin Canning's birthday, happy birthday, Griffin Canning, it was also Griffin Canning's mom's birthday. If I knew that going into the game, I knew it was Canning's birthday. I did not know it was his mom's birthday. If I knew that going in, then I guess I wouldn't be too surprised by 6 innings, 1 run. This continues to be, of all the stunning things about the 2025 New York Mets, as we sit here 26-15, first place in the National League East, and there are a lot of surprising things, Griffin Canning may have to be number one. I think even more so than Clay Holmes' conversion from reliever to starter, because you could find Met fans, I was certainly one of them, who believed that the conversion could work. Was there anybody, whether it was in the Rico audience or it's on the Fan or on social media, who believed in Griffin Canning upon that signing? I didn't hate the signing. I just kind of looked at it as all right, it's a depth move, a little bit of a heat check for this pitching lab. But how good has this guy been? He sets a great tone for this game on Mother's Day, strikes out Pete Crow Armstrong to start the game, strikes out Kyle Tucker, strikes out Seiya Suzuki, retired the first 6 guys, and through the first 5 innings, in which he was utterly brilliant, there was only 1 base hit against him, and that was an infield hit. And the 1 inning where he put guys on base, and it was a very tricky spot in the top of the 3rd inning. This is what I like to call the Kitty Field inning, because I've got a trick with Kitty Field. I'm going to say it, because the one thing I've learned about knowing tricks or knowing things that are advantageous to you, as fun as that is, isn't it fun sharing it with other people? Even if I get an email 6 weeks from now saying, hey, Evan, I remember episode 479. You told us that Kitty Field trick, and it worked for my son, Bob. Actually, no one has kids named Bob. My son, Jack, or my son, Chase. So let me share this little trick, because I consumed the top of the 3rd inning while walking the Shea Bridge to Kitty Field. So every game, they have this little competition in between innings where a kid will try to hit home runs at Kitty Field. Hoff, you've seen it before. It's every single game. They put a kid up there. The kid tries to hit as many home runs as he can. Very, very cool feature, right?
Oh, of course. And my kid has tried to find out now how to join that moment. So we're going to try it out next time we're there.
Oh, you should. Now, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's a season ticket benefit. I've never had my kids able to do it. I don't know if it's waiting on a line, but that's not even the point of the hack here. The point of the hack here is that when they do that competition, they shut down Kiddie Field for like 2 innings, right? So they send people away. As soon as the competition ends, which in this case, I'm not even sure if it's the same time every game, but it was the case on Mother's Day, the top of the third inning, race on over because the line has been reset. It's a reset line. People aren't waiting around to then go on the line. So if you want to take your kid to Kiddie Field and they want to hit on Kiddie Field, which my youngest Spence did on this beautiful Mother's Day Sunday, right after the competition, you race right over.
I love it. I love it. That is we've been there before during the filming and we've seen it. And you're right. That's exactly how it plays out. The key, if you want to try to participate, you have to go there before the game starts. You have to be rocking Mets gear, and they will start to kind of judge kids through that. It is an open-ended thing. It's not. I don't believe it's just I don't believe it's just a season ticket holder type of thing. So
it's an open-ended competition.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. So I was consuming this little Griffin Canning crisis while walking the Shea Bridge and then eventually getting to Kiddie Field, where if it's kind of the opposite end of the big scoreboard television screen, they show you the game. So while you're waiting on Kiddie Field, all you got to do is turn around, you see the whole game. But Griffin Canning puts the first two guys on base in the top of the third and gives up that leadoff hit to Dansby Swanson, issues a walk to Justin Turner, and Justin Turner's been awful this season, and then gets John Berti to fly out, strikes out Pete Crow Armstrong for the second time, and gets Kyle Tucker to tap out the Pete Alonso. That was his one crisis. That was it. Other than that, he was almost perfect. His other mistake came a few innings later, nursing that 1-0 lead. Sixth inning, which I was totally fine with him starting the sixth inning. I had no reason to take him out. He was about to go third time around the batting order. His pitch count at this point is sitting at about 78. So I have been known as Quick Hook Evan Roberts lately. I wasn't even thinking about taking him out. Like, between his pitch count being economical, between the fact that he handled basically everybody in this order with ease, the only hit he had given up was that little cheap infield hit I mentioned at Dansby Swanson. So I wasn't even with the whole, hey, I'll go batter to batter and let me get the bullpen warmed up. I was feeling so good about the way Canning looked that he was free reign to start the sixth inning, nursing this 1-0 lead, and we'll see what happens. Gets the leadoff man out and then makes the one mistake. Tries to throw a fastball by Pete Crow Armstrong, a high fastball, sitting at about 93, and that's really as hard as Canning throws. He's not overpowering. It's about hitting his spots. It's about his slider. It's about just pinpoint control, really. That fastball was up. Pete Crow Armstrong turned on it, and he freaking hammered it. I mean, that was an absolute bomb to the upper tank at Citi Field. At that point, I am starting to think, all right, if I'm Mendy, let me get the bullpen warmed up. This could be the beginning of the end. But to Canning's credit, falls behind Kyle Tucker, gets him to tap out to first base, gets ahead of Saya Suzuki, gets him to ground out to third base. And just like that, 92 pitches, 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, only 1 walk. That walk to Turner I mentioned. There were only 3 base runners against Griffin Canning. And he completes the 6 innings. So we haven't graded starters in a while, but that is an A- performance. The only reason I can't go straight A or A+ is because at the end of the day, it's still only 6 innings. But for him, that's great. And this revolution that Griffin Canning has had this year, it's almost unexplainable. I was listening to his postgame, and one of the Met beat reporters just flat out asked him, said, hey, Griffin, last year at this time, you're in the Angels rotation. You're pitching every 5 days. They don't use these words, but basically the reporter wanted to say it. You sucked. You had a 5.5 ERA. Can you please explain what is going on here? And Canning had a long pause. He thought about it and then said, quote, I have no idea. And I'm thinking to myself, you have no idea. I mean, you gotta have some idea. You went from a guy who shouldn't be in the rotation to one of the better, more reliable pitchers in the National League. That's happened. It is only 8 starts, so I know we need to be careful, but we are now a quarter of the way through the season. That's the beautiful part about 8 starts, or the beautiful part about a team playing their 41st game. We are now a little bit slightly past a quarter mark. He's 5-1, didn't get the win in this game, though. He could have. And his ERA continues to go down. Let me give you an updated ERA. At last check, he came into the game at 2.50. It is now a microscopic hold on, I've got to pull it up on my 2.36. 2.36. I mean, are we kidding ourselves? Clay Holmes, 42 and 2/3 innings, 2.74. Griffin Canning, 42 innings even, 2.36. And their numbers are basically identical. Clay Holmes and Griffin Canning. 42 and 2/3 for Clay, 42 for Griffin. Clay's given up 37 hits. Canning's given up 37 hits. Holmes has only given up the 1 home run. Canning's given up 4. 16 walks for Holmes, 16 walks for Canning, 44 strikeouts for Clay, 42 for Canning. Opponent batting average, 234 for Clay, 234 for Canning. They have basically had statistically the exact same seasons, and they have both been outstanding.
So is it the pitching lab? Is it a cheat code? Like, what the hell have the Mets figured out pitching-wise? That it's like the torpedo bat when it came up. It's like, okay, torpedo bat, now we have a new toy to play with. What do the Mets have that they're playing with that the pitchers are getting such impressive stats?
Well,
I
think
great.
the only evidence we have besides, lifting the curtain up, if they ever did for us, is just pitch selection. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. We talked about this since day one with Canning, how much more he's used his slider, and just the approach is very, very different. Now, we always hear this term now, pitch shape. So maybe he's just throwing his pitches all better. I mean, whatever the reason is, the Griffin Canning results, in my opinion, are more stunning than the Clay Holmes results, because we didn't have Clay Holmes as a starter the last 4 years. This was a new thing we were going to find out about. Griffin Canning had a 5.5 ERA, making starts every 5 days last year, and now he's turned into a modern-day Rick Reed.
So the one thing I will say, because I was able to watch the game, so I didn't see Gary Cohen on Roku, sorry, but I listened to a lot of it, and I listened to Keith Rad and Howie Rose talk about it, and I believe there was something about, I don't want to say it was the IQ, but Holmes and Canning specifically, they were talking about how smart they were, which is why whatever they're able to talk to them about and study at that lab, they're able to actually produce. So it is I'm not trying to say make it like they're the smartest guys in the room, but maybe that's what their approach is. They have to at least understand what the approach they need to do to be effective, and it's working.
Which is why when Frankie Montas returns, we almost have to blindly believe he's going to be great. I mean, we almost have to. And then you look at a guy like Luis Severino, who benefited so much last year with the Mets, and he's had some good moments this season. He got bombed by the Yankees on Sunday, and you look at Luis Severino's eyes, he misses the lab. He misses the Mets. He misses the benefits of it. I had a great time because it is Mother's Day. I took both of my sons and my wife to this game, and I was explaining the pitching lab to my wife because she was asking about Juan Soto and saying, so how's he doing? And obviously Juan Soto's first season is very, very complicated. It hasn't been great. I don't think so far through 41, 42 games, any of us could say he's been great. The team has been great, and certainly his presence has made a big impact, but he's hitting 130 with runners in scoring position. He's still lacking those impact moments. His numbers, while not awful, they haven't felt important, So I'm explaining that to my wife, and she's talking about how much money he's making. And I said, what's funny? For all the money they're paying Juan Soto, let me tell you about the pitching. And I was explaining Severino leaving, but benefiting, Griffin Canning, Clay Holmes. And she's like, that's amazing. And she says, well, what happens to these guys after they have a great year? Like, what's going to happen to Griffin Canning? What's going to happen to Clay Holmes? I said, well, Clay's locked in for a few years, so he's just going to be underpaid. But eventually these guys go to free agency and the Mets are likely going to say, thank you for your time. We're going to go find someone else. I mean, this is literally what we're staring at now, that this is going to be the Mets' identity of, look, maybe they'll keep somebody because obviously Sean Manaea was re-signed and we're still waiting on his first start of 2025. But it is crazy to think about what they have gotten out of this rotation now, a quarter of the way through the season. Listen to these stats. Let's go through all of them because it's ridiculous. It really is. Let's start with Senga. 7 starts, 1.16 ERA, 38 and 2/3 innings, 28 hits, 35 strikeouts, 17 walks, a 1.16 ERA. David Peterson, who's been the weakest of the 5, 7 starts, 2-2, 3.05 ERA, 38 1/3 innings. Griffin Canning, we mentioned, 8 starts, 5-1, 2.36 ERA, 42 innings. Clay Holmes, 8 starts, 5-1, 2.74 ERA, 42 2/3 innings. And then Tyler Miguel, more on him later because he had a dud recently. 8 starts, 3.10 ERA, 40 2/3 innings. Of the 5 starting pitchers, one of them has an ERA under 2. 2 of them have an ERA under 3. And the back end guys have ERAs in the low 3s. That's what they've gotten from the pitching. But Mother's Day could have been ruined by the lack of offense. You saw the top 3 guys strike out back to Matthew Boyd, which kind of replicated what Griffin Canning did to the Cubs' first 3 hitters. And then out of nowhere, 2 outs and nobody on. You got to love rallies that literally pop out of your ass, essentially. Starling Marte's behind in the count 0-2, gets hit by a pitch. And then Luis Torrens, who's done such a wonderful job as a backup catcher, rips one off the fence that I thought had a chance to get out, but it turns into an RBI triple. Kudos to Luis Torrens. He only played 4.5 innings because, unfortunately, if you didn't see it, a foul ball went off his balls. Is essentially what happened. And the first question after the game to Mendy was he wearing a cup? And Mendy starts laughing, saying, of course he's wearing a cup. Sometimes it just doesn't help you. Sometimes there's only so much you can do. I don't mean to laugh, but apparently he's okay. And he did supply the one measly run the Mets had. The rest of the offense was painful. Soto strikes out in the first inning. I don't think he heard any boos, but it was a meek showing. He bounces into a double play bottom of the 3rd inning. I couldn't tell you if there were boos because that was the Kiddie Field portion of my day. But I will tell you, the guy behind me online at Kiddie Field, mother effed Juan Soto. So he may not have heard boos, but the guy behind me wasn't thrilled about the situation. And yeah, he did all that with his kid around, which I'm, respect. That's how pissed off he was at Juan Soto. They have that little rally in the 4th inning. Torrens flies out. Acuna gets picked off. Lindor struck out a couple of times. The offense looked limp. Pete Alonso struck out 3 times in this game. And then Mark Vientos, who I mentioned this at the top of the pod, he is showing a pulse. And if you want to argue that the Baty return and Baty playing over him for a few days is lighting a fire under his ass, I guess you could make that claim. He was starting to hit before Baty came back. He was starting to hit before Baty started getting the playing time. Now, does he know that playing time isn't guaranteed with some of the options, not just Baty being back on the roster, but Jeff McNeil being healthy? Maybe. But he hits a first pitch home run in the 6th inning to give him the lead. They give it right back. Reed Garrett with a rare performance. You can't walk the leadoff hitter. You always ask for trouble when you do that. And Reed Garrett really relies on his command. Walked Michael Busch, gives up the RBI double to Nico Horner. But credit to Reed Garrett. When you blow a save, which Garrett did in the 7th inning, or blew a hold, I guess if you want to get technical about it, the most important thing is to not let it steamroll into something worse. And with a runner on second in 1 out, and now a tie game in the top of the 7th inning, he got Dansby Swanson to fly out. He got Justin Turner to fly out. So a blown save by Reed Garrett, a blown hold by Reed Garrett, but it could have been worse. He avoids it. You give your offense the chance to rally, which they did not do in the bottom of the 7th inning because shockingly, Luis Angel Acuna bounced into a double play. Ryan Stanek comes into this game in the 8th inning. Raise your hand, not if you're driving, because that's unsafe. But raise your hand if when Ryan Stanek comes into a tie game in the top of the 8th inning, you're thinking, this is going to end horribly. That's what I'm thinking. But he came in, pumped nothing but fastballs by John Baty, struck out Pete Crow Armstrong. I think the same thing. I remember the at-bat with Baty was all 98, 99, high heat. And Baty fouled a few off before finally striking out. He strikes out Pete Crow Armstrong. He got Kyle Tucker to fly out. A very good, sturdy inning by Ryan Stanek. Ryan Stanek is one of those relievers, and it's already happened, where there are going to be parts of the season where we say circle of trust, I trust him, he's been around, playoff experience, blah, blah, blah. And then there's going to be parts of the season where we hate him, where we don't trust him at all. We don't want him in any kind of close game. And maybe Ryan Stanek is turning it back in to the trust area. That he's going back into the, all right, he can actually be a serviceable major league reliever. But he delivers a very good 8th inning. And as the bottom of the 8th inning starts with Lindor, Soto, and Alonso, I'm at peak frustration. And I'm sure everyone else is. Because think about what we witnessed in game 2, which we'll get to in just a few minutes, and all the missed opportunities, going 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position, having Lindor, Soto, and Alonso come up small in a lot of big opportunities. And here they are, bottom of the 8th inning. Edwin Diaz is warming up. Let's freaking go. Let's do something. And when it got to 3-1 on Lindor, my brain moved to this direction. This is where I was at before the 3-1 pitch is thrown. He's going to walk. I think he's going to steal second. Soto's going to draw a walk, and we're looking at 2 on, nobody out. And Soto, not that I'm mad at a walk, it'll be another situation where he either doesn't come through or he did something positive, but it wasn't that big moment. Before I could put all those thoughts together, Francisco Lindor did it again. And what a year he's had. Home run number 9. He starts the series off with a bomb, and he basically ends this series with a bomb to right center field. Reminded me of the Estevez home run. Ahead of the count, a pitch to hit, a ball that jumps off of his bat. And Lindor gave you the little bat flip. He gives you these 3 things that I love. Little bat flip, not overwhelming, but a bat flip. Then he's running around the bases like, yeah, I'm a badass. I ain't getting too excited. But then as he was rounding third, you could see him going like, yeah, motherfucker, yeah, like really pumped up. Soto gave him a big high five, so no one's got to worry. And at that point, you felt good. I felt good. And what made me feel even better, even though Soto flied out on the first pitch to left field, was Pete rips a double. Vientos jumps on the first pitch, drives in his second run of the game to make it a 2-run game. And then Brandon Nimmo behind in the count. How many times have we seen this? How many home runs have the Mets hit? Not Lindor's, but how many home runs have the Mets hit behind in the count? And Nimmo on 1 and 2. 8th home run of the season. He's got 25 RBIs. I tell you that because despite the criticism of Brandon Nimmo, a lot of it fair, not saying it's unfair, but we are at the quarter mark of the season. So what's fun about the quarter mark is it's not that complicated to feel what guys are on pace to do. 8 home runs puts him on pace to hit 30 home runs. 25 RBIs puts him on pace to drive in 100 runs. So despite an OPS that's not good enough, despite a batting average that's not good enough, despite leaving countries on base, which Nimmo has done, I'll just say it again, he is now on a pace to go 30 and 100. So the offense explodes late. Diaz gets the job done. Happy Mother's Day. The Mets win a rubber game. And these rubber games, man, they're mood changers. They really are. Because I think you've heard this, Rico, for a half hour now. I'm in a good mood. We're all in good mood. How can you not be? They won a series against a good team in their own building. How do you not feel good? But if they lose this game and sitting at 2-2 bottom of the 8th inning with the offense doing nothing, they lose this game, the tone of this, Rico, not that we're panicking because they'd still be in a good spot, 25-16, first place in the NL East, all that beautiful, wonderful stuff. But there would have been a little cloud hanging over because Saturday night was frustrating. And if they lost this series after what happened on Saturday, again, not the end of the world, but mood changer. That's why these rubber games are mood changers. Now, let's get to the Saturday night game. I had plans on Saturday night with my beautiful wife. We had dinner. We then went out, actually stayed out, went to a hotel. It was like a real date night. So you know what that means? I started the Met game at about 1 a.m. Very, very late. Once she was snoring and passed out, time to watch the New York Mets. And immediately I see Tyler McGill just frustrate the crap out of all of us. He throws a million pitches. He's got command issues. He gives up the RBI hit to Saya Suzuki. I guess I give McGill a little bit of credit. That first inning could have done him incompletely. Gets a big strikeout of Miguel Amaya and gets through it only allowing 2 runs. But then the rest of his performance was very mediocre. He was lucky that Francisco Alvarez picked off Michael Busch in the 3rd inning because the Cubs were set up for another big inning there. But they opened up a 3-0 lead. They made it 4-0 when Dansby Swanson hit a home run. It was just a very icky outing by Tyler McGill. He's throwing a lot of pitches. Even though his pitch count didn't do him in, what did him in was his ineffectiveness. What did him in is after he gives up the home run to Swanson and gets through the 4th inning, he can't get through the 5th inning, gives up that base hit to Michael Busch. And Carlos Mendoza, and I like this, Carlos Mendoza basically said in the 5th inning, we just got back into the game with one big swing. I can't let this slip away. Mendy got aggressive in pulling Tyler McGill out. And I don't know where we are with Tyler McGill. We just gave you his overall numbers, and they're good. They're very good. Low 3 ERA. We all would have taken it. But his last few starts, really his last 2, his start against the Nationals, I thought was one of his best starts where his line doesn't look as good because he gave up some inherited runners were given up in the 7th inning of that game. But think about it. McGill pitched into the 7th inning. But his last 2 starts against St. Louis and now Chicago, 5 innings, 4 runs, gives up a home run, walks 3. And this one was 4 2/3 innings, 7 hits, 2 walks, gives up a home run. He's walked 5 guys in the last 9 2/3 innings. He's given up 2 runs. He's given up 8 runs, 2 duds in a row from Tyler McGill. This is a C- outing from him, maybe a D+. But the positive wasn't Tyler McGill. The positive was Mendy. Because when the Met bats are doing nothing and they're down in this game 4-0, and let's say Baty doesn't hit the home run, which we're about to get to, I could totally see Mendoza pushing McGill through the 5th inning and saying, you know what? We're down by 4. I'm not going to overwork my bullpen. Hey, Tyler, I'm going to prioritize, since your pitch count's only 77, getting me through the 5th inning and maybe even the 6th inning. But because Baty hit that 3-run home run in the bottom of the 4th inning that electrified that ballpark and got the Mets back into the game, a game that felt like it was dead man walking, I thought that impacted how aggressive Mendoza was in taking McGill out and going to Huascar Brazoban, who has been unbelievable all season long. Unbelievable all season long. This is a guy who, when the Mets acquired him at the trade deadline last year, and remember all the relievers, I viewed them all similarly in that they were all lottery tickets. Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek, Huascar Brazoban, they're all lottery tickets. And last year, Maton mostly pitched well till the end. Stanek didn't pitch well, then pitched well. Brazoban got sent down. Here we are a year later. Maton is elsewhere. Stanek's been up and down, and Brazoban has been one of their best relievers this side of Edwin Diaz. Him or Reed Garrett flip a coin. So I thought that Baty's home run in the 4th inning impacted Mendy's managing. As far as Baty's concerned, this is his moment, man. This is it. I like that he's been in there. I like that Carlos has given him that chance. Remember, he hit the home run. It gets lost on Friday because the Mets hit so many. They hit 4 home runs in the game. They hit 3 home runs in the first 2 innings. The 4 home runs were over the first 4 innings of the game. So you think of Lindor, maybe you even think of McNeil, maybe you think of Juan Soto. You almost forgot that Brett Baty went left center behind in the count on Friday night. Well, if you forgot, Brett Baty had a game. Like, this is a game, you could call it the Brett Baty game, even though it didn't end well. hits the 3-run home run that turns a 4-0 game into 4-3. And then later in the game, does it again. Speaking of him doing it again. So the home run by Baty brings him back. They're now in it. This forces Mendy to go aggressive with Huascar Braziman. This also puts under the microscope the 3 golden opportunities the Mets had in the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th to come back and tie this game while Braziman was keeping him in the game. Let's get to Soto. Soto had a bad week. He had a bad weekend, I should say. I know he hits the home run Friday. Friday was an offensive orgy. Everybody's thrilled. But Juan Soto comes up in the 5th inning with a runner on second, or runner on first, I should say, and 1 out. Lindor steals, and Soto has that weak-ass swinging strikeout. Big spot, 5th inning, comes up small. Lindor steals second. Alonso lines out. So missed opportunity in the bottom of the 5th inning with Soto striking out, with Alonso lining out. Then in the 6th inning, Brandon Nimmo leads off with a hit, steals second base. If you're Mark Vientos, can you do me a freaking favor and just hit the ball to the right side or hit the ball in the air and get Nimmo to third? He doesn't. He strikes out. Acuna grounds out. And then Brett Baty hit one like a P. 0-2. Like a P. But it was unfortunately right at the left fielder, Saya Suzuki. Then you get the 7th inning. Another golden opportunity. Tyrone Taylor, blue pit. Lindor draws a walk. Here comes Soto. This was Soto's moment. This was another one. He's had a few of these this year where he comes up and it has a chance to be not just a cool moment, because he's had cool moments. He's hit home runs at Citi Field. We know about some of the important ones, but this one would have felt different. You were trailing in the game 4-0. You work your way back. It's 4-3. There's 2 on. There's 1 out. I could even feel it in my bones that this was going to be an epic Juan Soto moment. I was even thinking, man, I'm watching this game at 2 o'clock in the morning. This thing happened 6 hours ago. I wish I was in the ballpark to see it. And what does he do? He strikes out meekly. Pete Alonso then grounds out. 3 golden opportunities in a row, down by 1 run, while your bullpen is doing everything. Even Hennessy's Cabrera comes in and does a really good job getting Crow Armstrong and Kyle Tucker out to end the 7th inning. Now let's get to Mendy's decision to go to Max Kranick. Max Kranick, after his great start, where, remember, he actually won one of the early Rico I'm the Man Now stars of the series, Max Kranick has now given up runs in 4 consecutive relief appearances. So when he comes in the 8th inning to face the heart of the batting order, I was a little bit mixed because you do have Reed Garrett as an option. And really, that's the guy I was thinking about. I was thinking about Reed Garrett in the 8th inning because I don't think there's anybody else in that bullpen. Ryan Stanek, Dednil Nunez, who, let me just confirm this, both pitched a night earlier. So did Reed Garrett, but he only faced 1 batter. So to me, Reed Garrett's clearly available. And I think it was Mendy kind of throwing Kranick in there again, saying, you know what, let me trust you. And I thought he was going to get through the inning because he issues the 1-out walk. He gets Justin Turner to pop out. There's a runner on first. There's 2 outs, 1-run game. But then he gives up the base hit to Nico Horner and walks Dansby Swanson. And it sets up this huge moment of bases loaded 2 out against Miguel Amaya. And he comes through the 4th Cubs base hit with runners in scoring position. And that's the difference. The Cubs got big hits in this game, whether it was in the 1st inning, whether it was Michael Busch in the 3rd inning. They got a collection of hits to take that early lead. And Miguel Amaya pokes one between 3rd and short. And a 1-run game becomes a 3-run game. And then it becomes even worse when in the bottom of the 8th inning, Brett Baty hits a 2-run home run, erasing the 2 runs they just gave up. Very, 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 very frustrating. The good news was Brett Baty. The bad news was Max Kranick giving those 2 runs up. But we got to be fair about Kranick. As much as we liked him in spring training, as much as he got off to a great start, it is now 4 consecutive performances of him giving up a run. 2 home runs over that little sample size, going back to the first days of May. Max Kranick is out of the circle of trust. But the problem is you got 8 guys in your bullpen. There's only so many you trust. And eventually there are going to be guys, just based on circumstances, that you're going to have to rely on in a close game. I would have pushed the Reed Garrett card. That would have made him unavailable in Sunday's game. But it's a one-run game. You work so hard to go back into it. It just sucked, giving up the 2 runs and then immediately getting back. But then you have the 9th inning because you're still down by a run. You can win this game, and you're facing Porter Hodge. Like, you're not even facing – I mean, the Cubs bullpen is, like, very up and down. Ryan Presley's had a terrible year. But you're not scared of Porter Hodge, and he walks the leadoff guy. And speaking of walking the leadoff guy, we crap on Jeff McNeil so much. What an at-bat by Jeff McNeil. He's up there pinch hitting for Tyrone Taylor, which you could argue the Mets shouldn't do, considering how productive Tyrone Taylor's been. But this is Mendy saying, I'm trusting the long track record. I'm getting a lefty bat up there. And Jeff McNeil fouls a million pitches off. He just missed a double. And he works a 10-pitch walk. Great at-bat by Jeff McNeil. So we got to be fair. I'd still trade his ass, but I got to be fair. And Francisco Lindor, who we're going to talk a lot about as a Rico Star of the Series candidate, bounces into a double play. That's a little bit of a negative in terms of, is he the Rico Star of the Series? When he comes up, a runner on first, nobody out, 9th inning, down by a run, and he's tapping one back to the pitcher. And to make matters worse and really put the exclamation point on Juan Soto's miserable, awful Saturday night, he gets ahead of the count 3-1, and he grounds out meekly to second base. When I think back to that loss, I think back to the missed opportunities, 1 for 10. But it really was a Juan Soto disaster game. Tyler McGill too, but it was Soto because of the opportunities he came up with. 2 on, 2 outs in the 3rd. Lindor on in the 5th. He comes up with 1st and 2nd in the 7th. And then even in the 9th inning, there's nobody on base. You're down by a run. The count's 3-1. Draw a walk. I wouldn't mind that. Give Pete Alonso, who's cooled off, that opportunity for some magic. Saturday's game was very, very frustrating. Very, very frustrating, which made Sunday's win that much better, that it was able to erase the Saturday loss. And really the calling card of any Met loss this season, because the Mets haven't lost a lot of games. They've only lost 15 games. We're a month and a half in. But their losses usually come with a lack of big hits. Their losses come with you saying to yourself when the game is over, wow, they could have won that game. That's literally the feeling coming out of a lot of these losses. Now, let's get to the Rico Star of the Series. By the way, if you're curious about my thoughts, Pete's thoughts on Game 1, you can go back to episode 478. We did an instant reaction on Friday night after the Mets pounded the Chicago Cubs. So if you want to hear some analysis of that game, Rico Brogna downloaded episode 478. But in talking about the Rico Star of the Series, the Rico I'm the Man Now Star of the Series, instead of me suggesting some names or Hoff stating the case, we're going to give you the first word on the Rico Star of the Series. So let's start things off with Adam. Adam writes, I think Brett Baty is the clear star of the series with his 3 home runs and 6 RBIs. Even though Baty's best performance came in a loss, he single-handedly kept the Mets in the game to the point where they were 1 swing away from a win. Plus, as you know, I like to point out the little things that are connected to wins. The fact that Saturday was a close game meant the Cubs had to use their top relievers. It's possible that Lindor, seeing Hodge on Saturday night, helped him get the game-winning home run off Hodge on Sunday just 16 hours later. Obviously, Baty also had the home run on Friday, and I'll even give him credit for making 2 plays in the 9th inning on Sunday as a defensive replacement. Baty's had a rough start, so he deserves some recognition for a great weekend as the star of the series. I know we all kind of settled in on Acuna cementing the second base job, but Baty definitely needs to get some consistent playing time to see if he might have figured something out based on this weekend's performance. This doesn't mean sitting Acuna every day. Baty, Vientos can DH sometimes, or days when Acuna sits, you can pinch run him and keep him in for defense. He'll still find his ways into the most games, and that way he's very dangerous as a pinch runner. That's from Adam. Yeah, I still want to see Acuna start a lot, but him off the bench is a weapon. We've seen Jose Azocar used as a pinch runner over the last couple of days. He is not the threat that Luis Angel Acuna is. So there is a suggestion from Adam that Brett Baty. He should be the Rico, I'm the man now star of the series. Tommy Rose has a different idea. Unsung hero from Sunday's game, Ryan Stanek. He comes in, he gives up nothing in the 8th inning, facing PCA and Tucker, no less. Truly set up the bats to do something amazing, which is what they did. Not to mention him coming off the schneid of his previous stinkers. Well done. So there is a vote for Ryan Stanek. I give you another guy who I kind of lean towards, but we have to talk this through because I'm still facing a lot of backlash from last week's Rico star of the series. Ever since I rejected the appeal from one of our emailers that it should have been Lindor over Soto. One of the reasons I rejected the appeal is I said, look, I didn't get a lot of people complaining. Everybody seemed okay with Soto being the star of the series with the 2 home runs he hit in the finale. And then all of a sudden I got inundated with Lindor should have won. You screwed Lindor emails. So speaking of Lindor, how about him in this Rico star of the series discussion? Game 1, we go back to the opener of this series. He hits a lead-off home run, setting the tone for everything that would happen. Behind in the count 0-2, he hits a bomb. Not only that, in the top of the first inning, speaking of setting the tone, Kyle Tucker hits that little ground ball, and Lindor charges, makes a great bare hand play. So Lindor supplied the defense, and he supplied the bomb that he hit in the first inning. The rest of his offense from that game, he had 2 more hits in the 6th and 8th inning. I think we'd all agree, whatever. Game was over at that point. So Lindor starts with a 3 for 5 with a home run and some really good defense, but the home run that set the tone for the Game 1 victory. Obviously, he has a very quiet Game 2 by going 1 for 4, including bouncing into the double play that pretty much ended their hopes in the 9th inning. But he did have a base hit behind in the count in the 5th. He stole a base. He set the Mets up to possibly tie the game up. And then the same thing in the 7th inning when he drew a walk right in front of Juan Soto. So even in his non-best performance, he came up with some pivotal plays. And then obviously you get to the finale, he hits the game-winning home run in the 8th inning. So Lindor was a combined 6 for 13 in this series, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs. The other guy I got to give some love to as a candidate is Mark Vientos. Remember, go back to Friday night. Vientos doesn't play. I don't love it. I don't think anybody loves it. He then comes in and plays Saturday's game, gets a couple of base hits, including a base hit behind in the count on Saturday, right before Brett Baty hit the 3-run home run that brought them in the game, and also gets a base hit in the 8th inning before Baty hits the 2-run home run. So it was the Brett Baty game, but Mark Vientos also supplies 2 base hits and scores a run. And then he hits the home run in the 6th inning, which could have been the game-winning home run. Mets had blown the 1-0 lead. He hits a home run in the 6th to regain the lead at 2-1, and then drives in an important insurance run in the 8th inning. Vientos ends up going a combined, I got 4 for 8 with a home run and 2 RBIs. I give you 2 more candidates before we finally, pick a winner. Well, Ryan Stanek was already mentioned. 2 scoreless innings, appeared in 2 games, but really the importance of what he did in Game 3. And then let's throw in Griffin Canning and Clay Holmes. Both guys delivered really, really strong starts. 6 innings, 1 run from Clay in the Game 1 victory. 6 innings, 1 run from Canning. I know that the Rico, I'm the man now star of the series, it's not easy for a starter to win. We've had 1 starting pitcher win. That was Kodai Senga back earlier this season in the A's series. It's going to be tricky because you can only impact 1 game, but I do want to at least give them their props. Canning and, of course, Clay Holmes. Now off. I do think this comes down to Brett Baty and Francisco Lindor. Where do you stand on the Rico, I'm the man now star of the series?
It's weird because Lindor clearly had the biggest home run, impactful home run on Sunday. It was like it was basically the game winner. And Brett Baty's 2 home runs on Saturday didn't mean anything because they didn't win. But I gotta say, Brett Baty to me right now, this homestand, he deserves it. No matter what I'll criticize the guy over and over and over when he's bad, but when he's good, you gotta tip the cap and say, guys locked in right now. 4 for 8, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. I mean, what else could you ask for the guy to do? He did it. He made the most of his moments.
Yeah. Oh, no. I totally get it. I mean, the guy hit 3 home runs in 2 games. He had a wonderful series. And yes, almost single-handedly led them to victory on Saturday night. By the way, I don't know if you noticed this, Pete. Saturday afternoon, right before I go out for this wonderful date night with my wife, I decide to make a transaction in our fantasy league. And the transaction was signing Brett Baty. And I inserted him right into my starting lineup, and he hit 2 home runs in his first game. So I may be able to reap the benefits of this newfound Brett Baty love.
All right. Well, now here's the real question, though.
Yeah.
When do the Mets put him on the market to trade him?
Hold that thought. It's a great thought. I want you to hold it, but I'm sorry. I got to be a heel here. I think the star of the series is Francisco Lindor. I just, what? As much as what do you mean what? He impacted winning in a major way. He was the impactor in game 1 in terms of the leadoff home run and the great defense he played. And he had the game-winning home run in the game 3 of this series. Like, I mean, his numbers were good. He was 6 for 13. Like, I don't know. I think but the case. Go ahead.
But that's all he did. And I'm going to be honest with you. Like 6 for 13, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs. Legitimately, the 2 hits that he got in the beginning of the series on Friday, and then the Sunday's game winner. Those 2 hits, were it basically. Those were the only thing that were impactful. He scored 3 runs. I mean, listen, you need to score runs to win, but 3, 2 of those were off of his own bat. It wasn't like he was doing more things impactful. Defensively, of course, you always got to say that he's always, personally, I think he's a Gold Glove winner. He is just unbelievable defensively, but it's 2 hits we're talking about. 2 hits. Right. Brett Baty was 4 for 8, dude. That's half of his at-bats.
I am going to allow myself to be outvoted, all right? In my heart, I believe it's Lindor, but your passion, the emailer's passion, and who knows, maybe Brett Baty needs that confidence to be the man right now as the Rico star of the series. So let the record show. I disagree, but I am going to overrule myself, agree with Pete Hoffman, and Brett Baty, I'm writing it down, is your Rico star of the series. We have the net negative of the series. I think you got a few candidates there.
Yeah.
Tyler McGill's lousy start, sure. I think it's Juan Soto, though. I really do. I think it's Soto. He had a very good first game, so I don't want to ignore that. But obviously, the first game was a game in which everybody hit. It was a game in which, by the time he hit his home run in the 4th inning, it was already 5-0. When he drove his run in the 8th inning, it was the final run of the game to make it 7-2. And I got an email about this. I do want to read the email before I just parrot what he's saying. But this is from Isaac. And I totally agree with what Isaac is saying. Isaac writes, I'm losing my patience for Soto with any sort of pressure. He kind of reminds me of Pete Alonso in 2024, in which he was so awful in the clutch. Now, maybe Soto can redeem himself in the NLCS, I guess, but I'm disappointing, and I think he's hurting the team. I don't agree with everything Isaac said there, but the one little part that I do agree with is so far his numbers, which are not beyond awful. Okay, they're not. His OPS is fine. He's on pace to hit 28 home runs at the quarter mark of this season. His RBIs are not great. Like, he's on pace to drive in, I think, like 70 runs. But his OPS is good, right? So it's not god-awful numbers. He has not been impactful. And that's where I get the comparison to Pete Alonso from a year ago. I am not losing patience. I am not concerned that this is going to continue all year. What I am saying to you on this Mother's Day, as the Mets wrap up this series against Chicago, is that he has had a lot of empty numbers. Some of them have been clutch. Like, we could play that Pete Alonso game. Obviously, the home runs he hit against Arizona, like, I'm not saying they weren't, but it feels like a lot of his at-bats where he does have success are not coming in the highest leverage of situations. And the numbers back that up. I mean, his numbers with runners in scoring position are not good. His numbers in high leverage spots are not good. And so when I look at this series, yes, he hits a home run in the opener. Yes, he drives in a run. He then goes 0 for 5 on Saturday. And we went through earlier the opportunities he came up with. 2 on, 2 out in the third, grounds out. Runner on in the fifth, down by a run, strikes out. 2 on and 1 out in the seventh, strikes out. And then in the ninth inning, down a run, 3-1 count, grounds out to second base. So heavy lies the crown. Juan Soto is your net negative, in my opinion, for this 3-game series victory against the Chicago Cubs.
I think there's no doubt about it. And it sucks to say, but empty, empty, empty. And I'm still waiting for Juan Soto's moment. Like, that's what I'm waiting for. I don't know why I'm waiting for it so badly, but, like, I feel like he has not, like you said, he's not settled in yet. Like, it's not impactful. And until, like, the home run on Friday felt a lot better. Like, he smoked it. That made me feel really good. But then you go for an 0 for the next 2 days. It's like, what are we doing? We're just, there's no rhythm to him right now.
And I don't want anyone to get this confused. This doesn't mean I don't trust him. This doesn't mean I don't believe in him. This doesn't mean I don't think he's going to wake up at some point. Maybe it's even against the Yankees. It seems to make sense that this weekend coming up, a week from now in the Bronx, would be the time to do it. So I'm not losing faith. I'm just calling it like it is. And those two things can be mutually exclusive. And they're winning despite it. And we've said that a lot this season, which is a great thing because I believe eventually he will get hot. I do believe eventually he will have impactful at-bats. And at that point in the season, who knows what the rotation looks like? Who knows what Pete Alonso is doing? Who knows if Lindor is going through some kind of slump? Who knows what the rest of this lineup looks like? So from that perspective, I'm not negative about it. It's just the reality. Now, you had a thought. You said trade Brett Baty. Our good friend Dan, last year he was known as Negative Dan. I like to call him Common Sense Dan. I also like to call him most important part of the Evan and Tiki show, including all of us, Dan, because he supplies so much material throughout a given radio program, and I appreciate that from Dan. Dan writes, trade Brett Baty right now. Trade. The value will never be higher, and you know he's turning back into a pumpkin. Pull the trigger, David Stearns. So let me throw this at you. Let's have some fun. You guys want to have some fun on this beautiful series-winning edition of the Rico Brogna? Brett Baty to the Miami Marlins as the centerpiece of a Sandy Alcantara trade. And for those not paying attention, Sandy Alcantara has been a disaster. His ERA is literally in the 8s. Every performance is bad. He had one on Sunday against the White Sox that looked good for a while, and then it imploded in the 6th inning. So it ended up being a bad performance. I do not think the Miami Marlins would be wise to trade Sandy until he figures things out, unless they secretly believe he never will, coming off of Tommy John surgery. But let's put this whole, I believe in Brett Baty, I think I like Sandy Alcantara to the test. Would guys be up for that? I would. By the way, it's not even a question because I don't want to overrate a couple of days of Brett Baty, and I also don't want to overrate the fact that Sandy Alcantara is coming back from Tommy John surgery. And there is a process. It doesn't happen immediately. I think, unfortunately, if the Marlins got dumb to make a trade like that, where they said, screw it, we don't want him anymore, I think you have to go into a trade like that expecting that you're not going to get the best of him this season. Sometimes it takes time to recover from Tommy John. I'll give you a specific example that we are all very familiar with. Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler missed all of 2015. I think he missed all of 2016. Let me pull up his numbers. But eventually it took Zach Wheeler almost 2.5 years to not only come back from the Tommy John, but be good after the Tommy John. So here's what happened. He misses 2015. He misses 2016, misses 2 full seasons to Tommy John surgery. In 2017, at 27 years old, he makes 17 starts and pitches to a 5.21 ERA. He has not pitched to an ERA above 4 since. Had the great year with the Mets in 18, had a very strong year in 2019. Brody Van Wagenen makes dumbass comments, and they let him go to Philadelphia. And, of course, since then, he's turned into one of the better, more reliable pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. I don't believe the Marlins would be wise to trade Sandy with his value down. But yes, I would do that. And I think we would all have to be open to moving Brett Baty in the right deal. But it kind of goes back to the same thing, though. Like, he's been great for a few days, but do we really think that Brett Baty's trade value is all of a sudden through the roof because he had a couple of good days? Let's see what's out there for him. And speaking about what's out there, Bob Nightingale, if you trust him, which most don't, said that the Mets have checked in on Luis Robert Jr. I loved Luis Robert Jr. during the offseason. Mentioned him a lot when we talked about potentially trading for Garrett Crochet. Here's where I stand right now on Luis Robert Jr. I'm concerned. He's still young. It's still a very affordable contract, but he hasn't produced in multiple years. And so, again, if you trade for him, I'm not opposed to trading for him. The Mets have done a really good job, obviously mostly with pitchers, but bringing in guys maybe on the down part of their career and turning them around. And Robert is certainly a guy young enough to turn it around, and center field is a spot where he may have an opportunity. But I don't have the same expectations for him I had 5 months ago, or even I had last year, because his struggles are building off of last year's struggles as well. Bob reported they're interested in Blade Tidwell. Blade Tidwell projects as a back of the rotation arm. So if Blade Tidwell is the key to the trade, I'm not scared off by it. It's not like they're asking for McClain or asking for Sproat. I don't think I'd go that high level of prospect to trade for Luis Robert Jr., but it comes back to the same thing with Miami. If the White Sox are going to trade this guy with lesser value, I would at least be interested. Now I'll give you a third trade idea, because why not? It's May 11th, and it's a lot better than last year's May 11th, where people wanted to talk about selling guys off. Obviously, Sandy Alcantara is a guy the Marlins may move. Luis Robert Jr. is a guy that has already been linked to trade rumors. Let's get to the Devers discussion. Now, I think this is a pure fantasy because despite what happened over the last few days in Boston with the Rafael Devers situation in terms of him not wanting to play first base, I don't think the Red Sox are going to trade him. I don't. They recently signed him to that mega extension. He's still young. He's in the prime of his career. I don't think that this issue, as ugly as it's been, is going to lead to Boston moving him. Would I want Rafael Devers on my team? Absolutely. Putting that kind of impact bat from the left side for the next 8 years with Lindor and Soto, it's magical. But my concern about it is not even his attitude, because I'll address that in a few minutes. My concern is if you now commit to that contract, what else does it allow you to do? Is Pete Alonso now gone? Is that what you'd be telling me? Because if you're paying Devers $32 million a year every year for the next decade, does that give you the wiggle room to keep Pete Alonso? And that's my concern. My concern is financial. My concern is Steve Cohen has a lot of money. He has spent a lot of money. But if you bring in a contract like that, what else does it allow you to do? Is he a better player than Mark Vientos? Yes. Is there a chance Mark Vientos ever turns into Rafael Devers? It's slim. We like Mark. He's been heating up recently, but the idea that he's going to turn into that kind of bat is unlikely. So it's not even about the talent. It's not about homegrown. To me, what would scare me is the commitment of money. Now, let me defend the Devers situation personality-wise, because I can see people saying, hey, but what about the fact the guy refuses to play first base? He seems like he's not a team player. He doesn't look good in this case, but I don't think the Red Sox look good. And I believe that Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns would have handled a situation like this 50 times better, to where it wouldn't have leaked out, to where the player wouldn't be that pissed off where he's openly calling out the president of the team. I think a lot of this is on the Red Sox. I do. So I would not be afraid necessarily of what he would turn into personality-wise. I think that situation, and Devers contributed to it too. I'm not putting it all on the Red Sox, but I think it was a combo factor. And one thing I really like about this Met franchise right now is I believe in them. I believe in the communication of Carlos Mendoza. I believe in David Stearns. I believe in them enough to think that the Devers situation in Boston would have never happened here. With that said, the Robert Jr. thing is real. I think Sandy Alcantara eventually being traded is real. I don't think the Devers stuff is all that real. But this weekend was real. Mets won 2 out of 3. And you can celebrate all your highlights of this wonderful baseball season with Mio Sparkling Sake, a true crowd pleaser. Light, bubbly, and easy to enjoy. Whether you're at Citi Field or your favorite spot, ask for Mio Sparkling Sake by name, a new tradition. Served chilled, imported from Japan. It's the official sake of Rico Brogna. Enjoy responsibly. I believe these next 3 games against the Pirates are important. And I'll tell you exactly why I feel these next 3 games are important. The Mets' schedule is about to stiffen. They play these 3 games at home against the Pirates. Obviously, the first game will be a challenge with Paul Skeens on the mound. And then we'll see Keller and we'll see Falter, who is a lefty. So keep that in mind for how Mendy draws up the lineup Wednesday night. And then after an off day, they play the first place New York Yankees, the really talented Boston Red Sox, and then 3 games against the LA Dodgers. And even though the White Sox and the Rockies are mixed in there, they then play the LA Dodgers again. 7 of 16 games from May 23rd on is against the Los Angeles Dodgers. And you throw in the games I just mentioned in the Bronx against the Yankees and the 3 games in Boston against the Red Sox. Mets have answered the call on a tougher schedule. They obviously just won 2 out of 3 against the team that's in first place in the National League Central. They won 2 out of 3 against a pretty good team in the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I'm not concerned about their abilities to beat good teams. They've beaten good teams. I also think you have to look at the Cardinals differently now. Are they a good team? They've been red hot. So it's not about they're not able to beat good teams. It's just they're about to face some really talented teams. So take advantage of the Pirates. Win 2 out of 3. Get yourself 12 games above 500. And then take your shot against the Yankees and the Red Sox. It is lining up for the Yankee series because it doesn't feel like the Mets are about to add a 6th starter. They don't need to. They could always add one if they want to give guys extra rest, but it is appearing to be that Clay Holmes is going to miss his former team and he's going to pitch Wednesday night at Citi Field against the Pirates. And so it would be Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, and David Peterson, not the Mets' best starters against the Yankees. It is also lining up, if you want me to project the Yankee rotation. Obviously, they got this Ryan Yarbrough situation, but they could certainly use the off day to skip him. And if they do that, you're looking at Carlos Rodon on Friday against Tyler McGill. You're looking at Clark Schmidt on Saturday against Griffin Canning, and then Max Fried against David Peterson Sunday Night Baseball. Card subject to change, but that's the way it appears that it's lining up for the big Subway Series at Yankee Stadium. But these 3 games are big. Take advantage of a down Pittsburgh Pirate team, go win this series, and keep on moving. But this has been fun, right? We're having a good time. It's been a fun season. Any thoughts, complaints about our Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series? You can always file your formal complaints by emailing us at thericob@gmail.com, thericob@gmail.com. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you downloading. Make sure you subscribe to Rico Brogna because while we guarantee you Rico Brogna's after every series like you're hearing right now, we mix an instant reaction. So as they take on the Pirates, you never know when we pop in. When they take on the Yankees, we plan on doing Ricos to recap each individual game, including a special drive home from the Bronx edition on Friday night. But subscribe because you never know when we pop in a bonus Rico Brogna. Thank you very much for listening to another edition, episode 479. Damn. Of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.